There is a living organism right now in the water coming out of your shower head. It is microscopic. It is in tap water, in swimming pools, in hot tubs, in the bottle of contact lens solution some people top up instead of replacing. It is on nearly every surface on Earth, and for almost everyone, almost always, it is completely harmless. It only becomes dangerous when it gets trapped against the surface of a human eye, behind a contact lens, in the thin film of water that a lens is never supposed to touch. Case 065 is a 35-year-old woman who wore soft contact lenses for short-sightedness, the way roughly 45 million other people in her country do. She showered in them. She sometimes fell asleep in them. Neither of these felt like a decision. They felt like nothing at all, the small, ordinary shortcuts of someone who had worn lenses for 15 years without a single problem. She did not know that one of those showers had pressed a single-celled organism against her cornea and sealed it there. She did not know that it had already begun to feed. And she did not know that over the coming weeks, 3 separate doctors would treat her for the wrong disease while it slowly, methodically ate a hole through the front of her eye. This is what happens when the most protected surface on your body meets something evolution never prepared it for. It starts with what feels like grit. 9 days before she ends up in front of a corneal specialist, case 065 wakes with the sensation that something is caught under her right eyelid. An eyelash, maybe, or a speck of dust. She rinses the eye. She takes the lens out, inspects it, puts it back in. The feeling does not go away. By the second day, the eye is red and watering, and bright light has started to hurt. She assumes it is conjunctivitis pink eye because that is what a red, weeping, irritated eye almost always is. She buys drops from a pharmacy. They do nothing. By the 4th day, the pain has changed character. It is no longer irritation. It is deep, aching, and wildly out of proportion to anything visible on the surface of the eye. This detail matters more than any other in the entire case, and it is the one that will nearly get her misdiagnosed to the point of losing the eye, so hold on to it. The pain is enormous. The eye does not look nearly bad enough to explain it. She goes to her primary care doctor, who sees a red eye, a scratched-feeling cornea, and a contact lens wearer, and reaches the most statistically reasonable conclusion available. A corneal infection, probably bacterial, possibly herpes. She is given antibiotic drops, and, when those fail, an antiviral, on the assumption this is herpes simplex keratitis, a common viral infection of the cornea that causes almost exactly this picture. For 5 days, she uses drops aimed at a virus she does not have. The organism in her cornea is not a virus. It is not a bacterium. It is an animal, and it is still eating. Quick pause, if you are new here, I open a case file like this one every week, and I would appreciate it if you came back for the next one. Back to the eye. To understand what is happening on the surface of case 065's eye, you have to understand what the cornea actually is, because it is one of the strangest pieces of tissue in the human body. The cornea is the clear dome at the very front of the eye, the window the light passes through before anything else. And it has a property almost no other living tissue shares. It contains no blood vessels at all. None. Blood vessels would cloud it, and a clouded window is a useless one, so the cornea evolved to stay perfectly transparent by going without a blood supply entirely. It takes its oxygen directly from the air. This is the reason the eye is so vulnerable to the specific organism that has colonized it. And it is the reason wearing a contact lens changes the math. Because the cornea has no blood vessels, it has almost no direct access to the immune system's usual first responders. The white blood cells that swarm an infection anywhere else in the body arrive at the cornea slowly and in small numbers. The front of the eye is, immunologically, a quiet and lightly guarded place. Under normal conditions, that is fine. The tear film flushes threats away, and the intact outer layer of the cornea is a wall almost nothing can breach. A contact lens quietly dismantles both of those defenses. It sits directly on the cornea, reducing the oxygen reaching the tissue. It traps a thin layer of water underneath itself, water that should never sit against the eye. And every time it is inserted or removed, it can cause microscopic scratches in the outer wall. Reduced defenses, trapped water, a breach in the wall. That is the exact set of conditions one particular organism has been waiting, across all of geological time, to exploit. The organism is called Acanthamoeba. Acanth, from the Greek acantha, meaning thorn or spine, amoeba, from amoebae, meaning change, because an amoeba constantly changes its shape as it moves. A thorn-bearing, shape-shifting, single-celled animal found in soil and fresh water and tap water essentially everywhere on the planet. Most of its life, Acanthamoeba does something harmless and almost boring. It hunts bacteria. It drifts through water and damp soil, eating the bacteria it finds there, and it has done this for hundreds of millions of years. Human eyes are not part of its plan. They are an accident. It happens to be extraordinarily well equipped to survive. When a contaminated drop of water is trapped under a contact lens, some of those amoebae end up pressed against the cornea, and there they find something better than pond water. The surface of a scratched cornea offers exposed tissue, and it offers bacteria because a contact lens eye is never perfectly sterile. The amoeba does what it has always done. It starts to eat. But the cornea is not pond scum, and this is where Acanthamoeba reveals the weapon that makes it so dangerous. When the amoeba first lands on the cornea, it exists in an active, feeding, vulnerable form called a trophozoite. If conditions turn hostile, if drops are used, if the environment dries, if it is attacked, it does not die, it transforms. It pulls itself into a hardened, dormant sphere called a cyst, wrapping itself in a thick, chemical-resistant wall, and it simply waits. Antibiotics do not touch it, antivirals do not touch it. The eye drops, aimed at a bacterial or herpes infection wash, harmlessly over a wall built to survive drying out in desert soil for years. And when the treatment stops, or the environment shifts back, the cyst cracks open and the amoeba resumes feeding exactly where it left off. This is why case 065 kept getting better, then worse, then better again. Every course of the wrong medication drove the amoebae into cysts and quieted the eye. Every time the course ended, they came back out. Her doctors were not incompetent. They were fighting an organism that can pretend to be dead and then return, using drugs built for entirely different enemies. There was one clue, from the very first day, that should have pointed at the answer: the pain. Acanthamoeba does something almost uniquely cruel. As it feeds through the cornea, it seeks out and destroys the corneal nerves, and the cornea is the single most densely nerve-packed surface in the entire human body, which is why a single eyelash feels like a boulder. The amoeba eating those nerves produces pain that is classically described as out of all proportion to how the eye looks. Severe, deep, relentless pain in an eye that does not yet look severely damaged. That specific mismatch agony without a matching appearance is the textbook fingerprint of Acanthamoeba keratitis. It is the thing that is supposed to make a doctor stop and think, this is not herpes. By the time she reaches a corneal specialist, the doctor is working through a list, ruling out each wrong answer in turn. Is it bacterial keratitis? It should have responded to the antibiotic drops, and it did not. Is it fungal? Possible in a contact lens wearer, but the appearance is wrong, and the antifungal trial does nothing. Is it herpes simplex, as two previous doctors assumed? Herpes keratitis produces a very specific branching pattern on the cornea called a dendritic ulcer, shaped like the limbs of a tree, and that pattern is not here. The antivirals failed for the simplest possible reason: there is no virus. Each wrong answer gets crossed off, and the list narrows to the one diagnosis nobody wants to reach, because it is the one that is hardest to treat and most likely to take the eye. But Acanthamoeba keratitis is genuinely rare, and herpes keratitis is common, and a busy clinic reaches for the common answer first. In case 065, as in a striking number of documented cases, the correct diagnosis only came after weeks of failed treatment for herpes, after someone finally looked at the cornea under high magnification and saw the shape that gives the disease away. A ring. A pale, circular infiltrate in the cornea, where the amoebae and the immune cells chasing them have gathered into a besieging circle around the center of the eye. The ring is Acanthamoeba drawing its own outline in the tissue it is destroying. A corneal scraping is taken. Under the microscope in the stained sample, they find them, the thorn-walled cysts, dormant and waiting, embedded in the layers of her cornea. By the time case 065 is correctly diagnosed, the amoebae are no longer just on the surface. They have burrowed down into the corneal stroma, the deep, structural layer that gives the cornea its strength and its clarity, and this is what turns a treatable early infection into a fight to save the eye. Treatment, finally aimed at the right organism, is brutal and slow. The only drugs that reliably kill Acanthamoeba, including in its cyst form, are a class of harsh antiseptics, biguanides like PHMB and chlorhexidine, the same category of chemical used to disinfect surfaces and swimming pools. They are dripped into the eye every single hour, day and night, at first, not for days, for weeks, tapering over months. The treatment itself is toxic to the eye. It is a question of poisoning the amoeba faster than you poison the cornea. For many patients, this works. and the eye is saved with some scarring. For others, it does not. When the infection has gone deep enough, or been misdiagnosed for long enough, the cornea clouds permanently, or thins, or perforates, and the only remaining option is to cut out the destroyed cornea entirely and replace it with a transplanted one from a donor. In the medical literature on Acanthamoeba keratitis, the proportion of patients who ultimately need a corneal transplant is not small. In one review of over 100 cases, more than half required one. Case 065 keeps her eye. Months of hourly antiseptic drops eventually clear the infection, and she is left with a faint central scar and reduced but usable vision in that eye, an outcome her corneal specialist calls, without irony, a good result. She will never wear a contact lens in that eye again. She will also never take a shower, or open her eyes underwater, or splash her face at a sink without a specific thought that most people never have to have the awareness that ordinary water is not sterile, and that the eye is not as sealed as it feels. Here is the part that should stay with you, because it is the entire point of the case. Case 065 did nothing exotic. She did not swim in a tropical lake or travel anywhere or take any risk she would have recognized as a risk. She showered with her contacts in. She napped in them once or twice. These are among the most common things contact lens wearers do, and the overwhelming majority of people who do them will never have a single problem, because the specific collision required a contaminated drop, a scratched cornea, a trapped amoeba, all at once is rare. But rare is not never. Nearly all Acanthamoeba keratitis cases occur in contact lens wearers, and the largest share of those trace back to water, showering in lenses, swimming in lenses, rinsing a lens case in tap water, topping off old solution instead of using fresh. The single most protective habit is also the simplest, keeping lenses away from water, and never, ever letting tap water near them. The organism is not going anywhere. It is in the pipes, in the tap, in the shower, doing what it has done for hundreds of millions of years, eating bacteria in the water, waiting for the one accident in 100,000 where the water it lives in ends up sealed against the one surface on the human body it can destroy. Case closed.